मैत्रेय उवाच सौग्रदन्वन्यदेवा बभाषे आसीच्चतुष्णीम् अरविन्दनाभम् धियोपगृह्णन् स्मितशोभितेन मुक्केन चेतो लुलुबे देवहूत्या.
Sri Maitreya said, O great warrior Vidura, the sage Kardama said this much only. Kardama said this much only and then became silent, thinking of his worshipable Lord Vishnu, who has a lotus on his navel. As he silently smiled, his face captured the mind of Devahuti, who began to meditate upon the great sage.
Yeah. So then what happened? Maitreya is telling that, okay, having spoken these words to Swayambhuva Manu, Kardamuni became silent and began to meditate upon his worshipable deity, Lord Vishnu. So that was indicated here. It appeared that Kardama Muni was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness because as soon as he became silent, he at once began to think of Lord Vishnu. That is the way of Krishna consciousness. Pure devotees are so absorbed in thought of Krishna that they have no other engagement, although they may seem to think or act otherwise. They are always thinking of Krishna. The smile of such a Krishna conscious person is so attractive that simply by smiling, he wins so many admirers, disciples, and followers. So instantly he began to focus on Lord Vishnu. So that was the greatness of Kardama Muni.
Prabhuji, why Vidura has been termed as a warrior?
So why Vidura is termed as warrior? So sa Ugra Danvan iya Deva Vase. So where was the word warrior? Ugra Danvan, oh great warrior. Danvan means the one who holds the bow in one's hand. Ugra Danvan means fierce warrior. So the reason is just like a warrior, when one goes to battle, they will never turn back their faces to the opponent party. They will fight till death, even though they accept death, but they never flee away from the battlefield. Similarly, just like you are a Kshatriya, you are a warrior, you are a chivalrous warrior in the battlefield. Similarly, here Kardama is a wonderful devotee. He is Krishna conscious always. So he never turns back from his Krishna conscious activities under any circumstances. Something like that. So in that way, a small comparison is given.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
सोऽनुज्ञात्वा व्यवसितं महिष्या दुहितस्फुटं तस्मै गुणगुणाद्याताध्याय ददौ तुल्यां प्रहर्षिता.
After having unmistakably known the decision of the queen as well as that of Devahuti, the emperor most gladly gave his daughter to the sage whose host of virtues was equaled by hers.
Yeah, not superficially, but he actually consulted with his wife and daughter after discussing that. Okay, he want to marry, but we want to stay with our daughter only till he begets children. Is that okay? So both the wife and the daughter agreed to it. So then, with a smiling face, they are giving the hand of their daughter in marriage to Kardama. Dadau Tulyam Prashitam. Considering him equal to be suitable, considering him as a suitable husband, they married their daughter to Kardama Muni. Shatarupa Maharajni. Shatarupa Maharajni Paribaran Mahadanam Dampatyo Paryadat Pritya Bhusha Vasa Parichadan.
most valuable presents suitable for the occasion, such as jewelry, clothes, and household articles in dowry to the bride and bridegroom.
So it's like that. So after the marriage, so before departing, the mother presented all the gifts that are needed for newly wedded couple. Shatarupa Maharajani, she is the great princess, the great queen. Paribarahan Mahadanam. Mahadanam means great wealth, not just gold and gold, etc. But whatever is required for the Dampatyo, Paryadat Pritya, Bhusha Vasa Parichadan, whatever is needed at the time for the newly married couple, all those arrangements were made by Maharajni Satarupa. So she presented whatever is needed for them, the ornaments, garments, and other things, everything she presented, all the suitable paraphernalia, etc. The custom of giving one's daughter in charity with a dowry is still current in India. The gifts are given according to the position of the father of the bride. Paribaran Mahadanam means the dowry which must be awarded to the bridegroom at the time of marriage. Here Mahadanam means greatly valuable gifts befitting the dowry of an empress. So in that way. So Bhusha means ornaments, Vasa means clothing, and Parichadan means various household articles. All these things were given. Bhusha, Vasa, Parichadan. Various ornaments, various clothing, and various household articles, they were all presented. Even today also we can see in marriages, all these things were given in marriage. So in that way. So it is like that. Even today also, in every marriage, the parents present all these articles to their daughter. So in the past, in Vedic custom, only the parents would, out of affection for their children, they would present everything. But nowadays it has become like a thing of demand. The boys' parents will demand so much, so and so dowry should be given, etc., etc. Of course, in addition to that agreed dowry, they also present all these additional gifts, the garments, ornaments, and household articles, even though it is not asked, out of love and concern for their newly married daughter. Prattam duhitaram samrat sadrikshaya gatavyata upaguya cha bahubhyam outkantayon matitashaya.
Thus, relieved of his responsibility by handing over his daughter to a suitable man, Swayambhu Manu, his mind agitated by a feeling of separation, embraced his affectionate daughter with both of his arms.
So now the parents are about to leave from that place. So then what happened, that is being described. A father always remains in anxiety until he can hand over his grown-up daughter to a suitable boy. A father and mother's responsibility for children continues until they marry them to suitable spouses. When the father is able to perform that duty, he is relieved of his responsibility. So this is the main responsibility of the parents. One of the main responsibilities. When they are married, all the responsibilities are relieved. That is how it is indicated. Asaknuamstadviraham munchan bashpakalamuhu asinchad ambavasteti netrodarai netrodair duhitushika.
The emperor was unable to bear the separation of his daughter. Therefore, tears poured from his eyes again and again, drenching his daughter's head as he cried, "My dear mother."
So Amba, Ambeti, so like that, Amba, Vasteti, like that, calling daughter to be mother. So he is crying at her before departing from that place. So it's like basically the farewell is happening. The word Amba is significant. A father sometimes addresses his daughter in affection as mother and sometimes as my darling. The feeling of separation occurs because until the daughter is married, she remains the daughter of the father. But after her marriage, she is no longer claimed as a daughter in the family. She must go to the husband's house. For after marriage, she becomes the property of the husband. So, according to Manu Samhita, a woman is never independent. She must remain the property of the father while she is not married, and she must remain the property of the husband until she is elderly and has grown up children for her own. In old age, when the husband has taken sannyasa and left home, she remains the property of the sons. A woman is always dependent either upon the father, husband, or elderly sons. That will be exhibited in the life of Devahuti. Devahuti's father handed over the responsibility for her to the husband, Kardama Muni. And in the same way, Kardama Muni also left home, giving the responsibility to his son, Kapila Deva. This narration will describe these events one after the other. So this is how it indicates the responsibility of men over women. As father, they need to take care of the children till they are married. As husband, one need to take care of the wife till one takes to renunciation. After renunciation, the children should take care of their mother till the death. So like that, the woman is always given protection and shelter and care. So it is like that. So then what happened? Amantratam munivaram anugnata sahanuga prataste ratamaruhya sabarya swapuram rupa ubayor rushikulyaya saratvatya surodaso rishinam upashantanam pashyan ashrama sampada.
After asking and obtaining the great sage's permission to leave, the monarch mounted his chariot with his wife and started for his capital, followed by his retinue. Along the way, he saw the prosperity of the tranquil seers, beautiful hermitages on both the charming banks of Saraswati, the river so agreeable to saintly persons.
So marriage is over, mounting the chariot, both king and queen, Swayambhu Manu and Saturupa, they are returning to their capital. So before returning, on the way they are seeing the serene atmosphere of the entire ashram, the Bindu Sarovar and other surrounding ashram areas. So that is being indicated. Tam ayatanam abhipretya brahmavartat prajapatim Gita samstuti vaditrai pratyudiyu praharshita.
Overjoyed to know of his arrival, his subjects came forth from Brahmavarta to greet their returning lord with songs and musical instruments.
So the kingdom of Swayambhu Manu is known as Brahmavarta. Understanding that their king had returned, all the people of the town came out and they received him or they greeted him with Gita Samstuti Vaditrai. So with music, praises and songs. So with all these things, they kind of received the king in their kingdom. That is being. It is the custom of the citizens of a kingdom's capital to receive the king when he returns from a tour. There is a similar description when Lord Krishna returned to Dwaraka after the battle of Kurukshetra. At that time, he was received by all class of citizens at the gate of the city. So formerly, capital cities were surrounded by walls and there were different gates for regular entrances. Even in Delhi today, there are old gates and some other old cities have such gates where citizens would gather to receive the king. Here also the citizens of Barishmati, the capital of Brahmavarta, the kingdom of Swayambhuva, came nicely dressed to receive the emperor with decorations and musical instruments. So like that. Barishmati Namapuri Sarva Sampad Samanvita Nyapatan Yata Romani Yajnasyangam Vidunvata Kushakashashate Kushakashasta Evasam Shashwad Dharita Varchasa Rushayo Yai Parabhavya Yajnajnan Yajnamijre.
The city of Barhismati, rich in all kinds of wealth, was so called because Lord Vishnu's hair dropped there from his body when he manifested himself as Lord Bor. As he shook his body, this very hair fell and turned into blades of used for mats, by means of which the sages worshipped Lord Vishnu after performance of the sacrifices.
So, some details about his kingdom are mentioned. His kingdom is known as Brahmavarta, as it is mentioned in the previous verse, Brahmavartat. And his capital is known as Barishmati. The capital city is known as Barishmati. So this Barishmati has become known as the modern day Bitur. In the state of Uttar Pradesh, the next to Kanpur, there is a small town called Bitur. So I have been to Kanpur once for giving presentations on Bhavat cosmology. So the devotees took me to Bitur. This Bitur is on the bank of Ganga. And in that Bitur on the bank of Ganga, there is a holy place called as Brahmavarta. So as it is mentioned in the previous verse, Brahmavarta. So there is a place known as Brahmavarta, that is where Lord Rishabdev spoke to his 100 sons on the instructions of how to perform bhakti in this world, etc. etc. Those things are there. That holy place is there. Lord Brahma's lotus feet is there. People come and take bath in Ganga and offer their homage to Lord Brahma's lotus feet, etc. That they are there. There may be many other pastimes, etc. etc. So the town is called as Bitur now. So previously it was known as Barishmati and it became known as Bitur. And there is another connection to this Barishmati also in the Bhagavatam 4th canto. There is a king named Prachina Barhi. Prachina Barhi. The name of Prachina Barhi comes because this king is the father of 10 Prachetas. He comes in the lineage of King Prutu, King Dhruva Maharaj. In that lineage it comes. So he is a person very much into performing one yajna after another yajna. So while performing yajna after yajna, the entire kingdom is filled with so many kusha grass mats. So while sitting for a yajna, the king is supposed to sit on a kusha grass mat. So in order to sit on top on the mat should be placed in a particular direction. The person should always be sitting facing towards north while performing yajna, and the mat should be between east and west. And the tail portion, the top portion of the mat should be facing the east. The bottom portion of the grass, the kusha grass, should be facing the west, and the top portion, the tail portion of the kusha grass should be facing the east. And the person should be sitting on that mat and should be facing the north. So it is like that. So here Prachina means east and Barhi means kusha grass. The mat made out of kusha grass should be placed in such a way that the tender shoots, the top portion of that kusha grass should be facing towards east. Since there are so many mats facing towards, the tender shoots are facing towards east, he became known as Prachina Barhi. So that Barhi is here. Barhismati. So this entire town is filled with so much kusha grass. Why? There is kusha grass and kasha grass. When Lord Varaha appeared in order to lift the Bhumandala, as we read in the 13th chapter of this canto, so he shook his body. That time, lot of hair, the water drops and the hair from the body of Lord Varaha fell in this particular town. Later on, the entire town is filled with so much kusha grass and kasha grass, which are very auspicious and very green. So this place became known as Barishmati. And this place is connected to Lord Yajna. So Lord Varaha, who is representing Yajna. So here, the people, the great sages from the entire universe stay in this particular Barishmati town, and they continue to perform yajna after yajna for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So taking this as a reference, Prabhupada writes in the purport that yajnartat karmano annetra lokoyam karma bandhana, as this verse comes in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So one should perform all one's activities for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. Otherwise, the activities that we perform in this world will bind us in this material world, either through auspicious or inauspicious results. So Rushayo Ei Prabhava, understanding the great potency of this place, since this place is filled with a lot of kusha grass and kasha grass, which are grown up by the hairs and the sweat drops of Lord Varaha. So they perform so many austerities and yajna after yajna in this particular place. So this place became known as very auspicious place filled with so many great sages. So that place is the capital of our Swayambhuva Manu, and that is now known as Bitur, the modern day Bitur on the bank of Ganga, very close to Kanpur town. So it is like that. Kushakashamayam barihi astirya Bhagavan Manu ayajad yajna purusham labdastanam yato bhuvam.
Manu spread a seat of kushas and kashas and worshipped the Lord, the personality of Godhead, by whose grace he had obtained the rules of the terrestrial globe.
So labdastanam yato bhuvam, having given by Lord Brahma to rule over the entire Bhumandala, making this Barishmati as the capital, ruling over the entire Bhumandala. Swayambhu Manu spreading the mats made of kusha grass and kasha grass all over, and he worshipped the Supreme Lord by performing various yajnas and other activities. So that is what is indicated here. Ajayad Yajna Purusham, he continuously worshipped Ayajad Yajna Purusham. He continuously worshipped Lord Vishnu. Manu is the father of mankind, and therefore from Manu comes the word man, or in Sanskrit Manushya. Those who are in a better position in the world, having sufficient wealth, should especially take lessons from Manu, who acknowledged his kingdom and opulence to be gifts from the Supreme Lord, and thus always engaged in devotional service. Similarly, the descendants of Manu are human beings, especially those who are situated in a well-to-do condition, must consider that whatever riches they have are gifts of the Supreme Lord. Those riches should be utilized for the service of the Lord, in sacrifice performed to please Him. That is the way of utilizing wealth and opulence. No one can achieve wealth, opulence, good birth, a beautiful body, or nice education without the mercy of Supreme Lord. Therefore, those who are in a possession of such valuable facilities must acknowledge their gratefulness to the Lord by worshipping Him and offering what they have received from Him. So it's like that. Yat karoshi yadashnashi yadjosh tadashya yat tapashyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. So whatever we do, whatever we have, engage that in the service of Supreme Lord. That is ultimate perfection. So in that way, one should utilize all one's facilities in service of the Supreme Lord. That is actually the highest perfection. So Prabhupada said that in the modern age, In the modern age, the mission of Krishna consciousness is for everyone to acknowledge the supremacy of the Lord Krishna. Whatever one has in his possession must be considered a gift by the grace of the Lord. Everyone therefore should engage in devotional service through Krishna consciousness. If one wants to be happy and peaceful in his position, either as a householder, as a citizen of, or member of a human society, one must promote devotional service for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So it is like that. One should practice Krishna consciousness and one should preach Krishna consciousness. That is the best way to be happy in this world. That is how Prabhupada is actually indicating here by taking the example of Swayambhu Manu. And many more details about Swayambhu Manu are mentioned in the rest of the chapter in order to indicate us that how to lead one's life in this world. Barishmatim nama vibhur yam nirvishya samavasat tasyam pravishto bhavanam tapatraya vinashanam.
Having entered the city of Bahishmati, in which he had previously lived, Manu entered his palace, which was filled with an atmosphere that eradicated the three miseries of material existence.
Yeah. So having received by the citizens of the kingdom, then the king entered into his palace. And his palace is Tapatraya Vinashanam. That palace is so auspicious that a person is not at all affected by Tapatraya. Adi Bhautika Klesha, Adhyatmika Klesha, and Adi Daivika Klesha. Because he himself is a great devotee and great personality. And how can his residence be filled with all these kinds of troubles of this world? Especially his palace is freed of all these three kinds of miseries that are very much available in this world. So this is the greatness of Swayambhu Manu. So Prabhupada is taking the clue, says that anyone who comes to Krishna consciousness, he is freed from Tapatraya. It is not that they will be freed from Tapatraya immediately, but they will understand why Tapatraya is coming. Either it could be the nature of this world, or it could be the result of one's past misdeeds. But the devotees are not affected by those things. They will accept all those troubles, but they will not be dejected by those troubles. They will continue to practice Krishna consciousness. So in that way. But eventually all those miseries will be stopped. As we read in the Nectar of Devotion that Kleshagni, Shubhada, etc. First Kleshagni, slowly the miseries will be eradicated and eventually the auspicious comes in the life of a devotee. It's like that. For a Krishna conscious person, both living in heaven and living in hell are equal. How Swayambhu Manu created an atmosphere wherein he was not affected by material miseries is explained in the following verses. How could he do it? How could he achieve this kind of situation that is mentioned in the future verses? Sabharya sapraja kaman bubuje na virodata sangiyamana satkirti srashtibhi suragayakai prati usheshu anubaddena Hrida Shrunvan Hare Kata.
Emperor Swayambhu Manu enjoyed life with his wife and subjects and fulfilled his desires without being disturbed by unwanted principles, contrary to the process of religion. Celestial musicians and their wives sang in chorus about the pure reputation of the emperor. And early in the morning, every day, he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart.
Here, three things are mentioned. The first thing is that Sabharya Sapraja Kaman Bubuje Anya Virodata. So he says that he enjoyed in the company of his wife and in the company of his children and also in the company of the citizens of the kingdom. And Bubuje Anya Virodata. And he never enjoyed by causing trouble to others, by causing disturbance in others' dharmic activities. He allowed others to perform their dharmic activities. He performed his own dharmic activities and living peacefully in coherence in the midst of all the other people. So this is first thing. Second thing is that Sangiya Mana Satkirti Sa Stribir Sura Gayakai. His glories are so famous, so famous. Even the Sura Gayakas, the Gandharvas, along with their ladies, the Apsaras, his glories were sung everywhere, all over the universe. So that was his greatness. So since he's so famous, his glories are sung everywhere. He was happy and enjoying that situation. And more important than that is that Prati Usheshu, every morning, Usheshu means Ushodaya, the sunrise, every morning during sunrise. Anubaddena, as a regular fixed activity. Hrida Shrunvan Harikatha. With his heart, he would continuously hear Harikatha every morning. This is one of the most important activity that is performed by Swayambhu Manu. Every day morning, without fail, continuously, regularly, he would hear Krishna Katha with his dedicated heart. Hruda, putting his heart, he would hear Krishna Katha. So Prabhupada actually elaborates on this particular point in the entire purport. Human society is actually meant for realization of perfection in Krishna consciousness. There is no restriction against living with a wife and children, but life should be so conducted that one may not go against the principles of religion, economic development, regulated sense enjoyment, and ultimately liberation from material existence. The Vedic principles are designed in such a way that the conditioned souls who have come to this material existence may be guided in fulfilling their material desires, and at the same time be liberated and go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada just kind of touching upon Dharmartha Kama Moksha, which are the principles of religious life, but one should focus on moksha. So it is understood that Emperor Swayambhu Manu enjoyed his household life by following these principles. So, but it is also stated here that early in the morning there were musicians who used to sing with musical instruments about the glories of the Lord, and the Emperor with his family personally used to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Person. Of course, Prabhupada comments both the statements that the singers, they would glorify the glories of the Supreme Lord and he would hear. So it is like that. So it can be taken that his glories are sung by them, or they are singing the glories of the Supreme Lord and he was hearing every day without fail. Either way we can take it. So it is like that. So these are the activities one should perform. So then Prabhupada goes into saying that so one should read and hear from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam every day morning. That is the best way to keep oneself in Krishna consciousness. As far as temples are concerned, in each and every royal place, in each and every royal palace or rich man's house, inevitably there is a nice temple. And the members of the household rise early in the morning and go to the temple to see the Mangalartika ceremony. Hare Krishna, any one of you have been to Jaipur anytime?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So what is the specialty of Jaipur?
Radha Govindadev temple.
So what is the specialty of that temple?
Like, I think it was built by the king over there, and it was considered as a royal temple, but others were also allowed. So there are a lot of...
No, that was past. But even today also, what is so special about that temple in Jaipur?
Mangalarti.
Mangalarti. The entire town comes for Mangalarti. Throughout the day, temple is normal, free only. But in the morning at 4:30, if you go, the entire temple is fully jam-packed. And people from all over Jaipur, they come and attend Mangalarti. Once the Mangalarti is over, they will disperse. No one will be seen. Then again, people will assemble during Shungar Arati. Again, people will assemble during Rajbhog Arati. It is only during Arati time. We don't know from where the people will come, but a huge number of crowd would attend. And once the Arati is over, they exchange prasad. Another specialty of this temple is that once the Arati is over, there will be a lot of huge prasadam counters. And they purchase the prasadam and they give it to known people. Just like that, as a gift. So this is the specialty of this particular temple in Jaipur, and this used to be the custom in the past in all temples. So there would be a temple for the entire town. People would assemble in the temple during morning arati, afternoon arati, and etc. etc. So that used to be their regular household activity for all the people. The Mangalartika ceremony is the first worship of the morning. In the Artika ceremony, a light is offered in circles before the deities, as are a conchs and flowers and fan. The Lord is supposed to rise early in the morning and take some light refreshment and give audience to the devotees. The devotees then go back to the house or sing the glories of the Lord in the temple. The early morning ceremony shall take place in Indian temples and palaces. Temples are meant for assembly of the general public. Temples within palace are specially for the royal families, but in many of these palace temples, the public is also allowed to visit. The temple of the King Jaipur is situated within the palace, but the public is allowed to assemble. If one goes there, he will see that the temple is always crowded with at least 500 devotees. After the Mangalartika ceremony, they sit down together and sing the glories of the Lord with musical instruments and thus enjoy life. Temple worship by the royal family is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, where it is stated that those who fail to achieve the success in the Bhakti Yoga principles within one life are given a chance to take birth in the next life in a family of rich men or in a royal family or family of learned Brahmanas or devotees. So if one gets the opportunity to take birth in these families, he can achieve the facilities of Krishna conscious atmosphere without difficulty. A child born in the Krishna conscious atmosphere is sure to develop Krishna consciousness. The perfection which he failed to attain in the last life, again offered in this life, and he can make himself perfect without fail. So this is the special blessing offered to those devotees who could not complete their bhakti in the past life. They will be given favorable circumstances so that they can continue and perfect their lives in this lifespan. So it is like that. Any questions till now? Nishnatam yoga mayasu munim swayambhuvam manum yad abramsayitum boga nashekur bhagavat param.
Thus, Swayambhu Manu was a saintly king. Although absorbed in material happiness, he was not dragged to the lower grade of life, for he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna conscious atmosphere.
So here it is mentioned that what is it? So Swayambhu Manu is able to, though yoga mayasau. So Nishnatam yoga mayato. Nishnatam, he was actually expert in Ashtanga yoga. He had all the mystic perfections. He had all the facilities one can enjoy in this world. But in spite of that, his consciousness never deviated. Yet, Brahma Sayitum Bhoga. Even though there is so much enjoyment surrounding him, but his mind is never attracted by them. He is enjoying everything as a result of one's karma, but he was never deviated. He was never attached to such kind of enjoyments. His mind is always focused on Krishna. Na Shekur. None of them would never shake his consciousness, never deviate his consciousness, because he has taken shelter of Bhagavat Param, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is like that. The kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted enjoyment. But Swayambhu Manu was considered as a saintly sage, because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. So it's like that. If one's home and one's surroundings are all Krishna conscious, one is never deviated or degraded. That is what Prabhupada is indicating here. Of course, still, even though if one is there in Krishna conscious atmosphere, if one's heart is not there, one is dragged down by temptations, etc. So one should be always reminded about the importance of Krishna consciousness, so that one remains careful and practices Krishna consciousness sincerely. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in that way. So, how did he remain himself in Krishna consciousness? That is indicated in the next two verses. Even though living in the midst of so many kingly opulences, how could he retain his Krishna consciousness? Ayatayamas tasyasan yamaswantarayapana shrunvato dhyayato Vishnu kurvato burvata kata.
Consequently, although his duration of life gradually came to an end, his long life, consisting of Manvantara era, was not spent in vain, since he ever engaged in hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord.
So, since he was passing his time, ayatayam. So, yatayama means passing time. Ayatayama means he never wasted his time in ordinary material dealings, because his time is always engaged in Shrunvato, hearing Krishna Katha, Dhyayato, meditating upon Lord's pastimes, and then it is like Burvato means speaking about him. Burvata Katha, speaking about Krishna to others whomsoever visit him. And Kurvato means composing various songs, novels, and the books on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, doing all these things. Shrunvato, Dhyayato, Kurvato, Burvato, Vishnuha Katha. So he is always engaged in hearing Krishna Katha, meditating upon Lord's pastimes, composing various songs and other literature on the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes, and then finally speaking about them. So he was not disturbed by the material enjoyment that is there around him. So it is like that. So Yama Swa Antara Yapana. So thus his time is being spent in Krishna conscious activities. It was never a waste of time. So in that way. As freshly prepared food is very tasteful, but it keeps for 3 or 4 hours, becomes stale and tasteless. So the existence of material enjoyment can endure as long as life is fresh. But at the fag end of life, everything becomes tasteless and everything appears to be vain and painful. The life of Emperor Swayambhu Manu, however, was not tasteless. As he grew older, his life remained as fresh as in the beginning because of his continued Krishna consciousness. The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh. So Prabhupada quotes a verse from 2nd canto, 3rd chapter. So what was the verse? Anyone can remember? We discussed this verse many times. Hayur arati vaipumsham udyan asau chayan asau. Tasyarte vaito nita uttama shloka vartayat. The lifespan is being depleted with every rising and setting of sun for people in general. But for a devotee who is always engaged in hearing and discussing Krishna Katha, Uttama Shloka Varta, there is no such depletion of their lifespan. So that's how the greatness of Krishna conscious person is being glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Swayambhuva Manu is one such example. Thus, he engaged his entire life in Shrunvato, Dhyayato, Bruvato, and Kurvato of Krishna Katha, of Vishnu Katha. So in that way, he engaged his life. Because he engaged his life like that, though in spite of living in the midst of all the heavenly opulences, but he is never deviated from Krishna consciousness. So like that. Like that, he passed his entire life for one Manvantara period. That is indicated in the next verse. Saevam Swantaram Ninye Yuganam Eka Saptitam Vasudeva Prasangena Paribhuta Gatitraya.
He passed his time, which lasted 71 cycles of 4 ages, 71 into 43 lakh 20,000 years, always thinking of Vasudeva and always engaged in matters regarding Vasudeva. Thus, he transcended the 3 destinations.
Yeah. So, like that, passing his time in Shravanam, Shrunvato, Dhyayato, Kurvato, and Bruvato, he passed a lifespan of Eka Saptitam, Yuganam Eka Saptitam. So, 71 Chaturyugas he passed. So, one Manvantara generally lasts for 71 Chaturyugas. That much lifespan he passed, engaging himself in Krishna consciousness. So, Vasudeva Prasangena, by engaging in the talks of Krishna Katha, Paribhuta Gatitraya. Because of that, he was never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. So, etc. etc. So, Gatitraya means, so he was never affected by the 3 states of waking, sleeping, and dreaming. So, in a day, we go through all the 3 states. Waking, sleeping, and dreaming. Waking means throughout the day we are awake. Sleeping, throughout the night we are sleeping. And in the sleep we also go through dreams. So he was not disturbed by any of these 3 things. And he is not disturbed by 3 modes of material nature. Gatitraya. The 3 modes will avoid person by as per their activities, 3 different kinds of destinations. So he was not affected by them. And Gatitraya, the people of this world are also affected by 3 kinds of miseries: Adhyatmic Klesha, Adibhautik Klesha, and Adhaivic Klesha. He was not affected by them. So he was actually beyond all these influence of all these variety of 3s. The 3 destinations are meant for persons who are under the control of the 3 modes of material nature. These destinations are somewhat described as the awakened, dreaming, and unconscious states. So otherwise, the effect of 3 modes are 3 kinds of miseries: Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, Adhaivika, Klesha. So one is not affected by all these 3 kinds of things. So Bhagavad Gita says that anyone who engages in devotional service to the Lord automatically becomes transcendental to the destinations of material nature and is situated in Brahmabhuta consciousness. So like that. So what was the verse from 18th chapter, 1854? Yes, Prabhu, Binit Prabhu, yaad hai kya?
Can you give some hint, Prabhu?
Brahmabhuta.
Brahmabhuta prasanatma no sachoti na kankshti sama sarva bhuteshu mad bhakti labhate param.
What does it mean?
Person on the stage of Brahman does not rejoice nor laments, and when he reaches that stage, he attains devotional service unto me.
Yes. So one who reaches the Brahmabhuta platform, he is never affected by any material things. He is always relishing the bliss of Brahman or the bliss of Krishna consciousness. So in that way, it is like that. Although Swayambhuva Manu was the ruler of this material world, appeared to be absorbed in material happiness, but he was neither in the mode of goodness nor in the mode of passion or ignorance, but in the transcendental stage. Therefore, one who fully engages in devotional service is always liberated. So Sri Bilvamangala Thakur states this: if I have unflinching devotion to the lotus feet of Krishna, then mother liberation is always engaged in my service. The complete perfection of material enjoyment, religion, and economic development is at my command. Muktir Muklitanjali Seva Yasmat. So like that, if one is in Krishna consciousness, Dharmartha Kama Moksha will be standing at one's doorstep to award all the benefits of them. So like that. The devotees are always situated on the transcendental platform of Brahma Bhuta stage of self-realization. The same thing. This verse is also somewhat similar to that. So how did he spend his life for one Manvantara span? That is mentioned in the next verses. Sharira Manasa Divya Vayase Cha Manusha Bhautikascha Katam Klesha Bhadante Hari Samshrayam.
Therefore, O Vidura, how can persons completely under the shelter of Lord Krishna in devotional service be put into miseries pertaining to the body, the mind, nature, and other?
So basically, how can the person in Krishna consciousness be affected by the three kinds of kleshas that is kind of indicated here, like Sharira and Manasa, from one's body and mind? These are like Adi Bhautika Klesha. And Divya refers to the celestial beings like ghosts, etc., supernatural beings. This is Adi Daivika Klesha. And Vayase Echa Manusha. And with other other living entities. Like this is like Adi Bhautika Klesha. So one is never affected by these three kinds of miseries. One who is in Hari Samashrayam, one who has taken shelter of Lord Hari completely. Ashraya means taking shelter. Samashraya means taking shelter completely with one's mind, Manasa, Vacha, Kayana. So such kind of person is never affected by Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika Kleshas. So that is indicated here.
Hare Krishna.
1 second, Mataji, 1 second. One who has completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the
Okay.
Lord in Krishna consciousness, he is in the transcendental stage. He is not disturbed by any miseries, either due to the body, the mind, or natural disturbances of summer and winter. He is transcendental to all these miseries. So this is what is indicated. Yes, Mataji.
Maybe somewhat I could get the answers from the line what we read. I was just trying to understand that whether this is applicable only for pure devotees, means it appears like that the Manu at what level he was at the transcendental level. But
Yeah,
we
as you
do see
mentioned.
even the exact.
Yes, as you mentioned, the pure devotees are not at all affected, but at our level, to the extent we are in Krishna consciousness, to that extent we are not disturbed by these natural calamities or other surroundings. So it is not that we are not at all affected since we are in the material body in this material world. We have to go through this material phenomenon, but our response will determine how much we are affected by it. Even the personalities like great Goswamis and Prabhupada also went through the physical phenomena of going through disease, etc., etc. That is always there. We cannot deny that. But what is our response to those things that determines our level of Krishna consciousness? So in that way. Of course, the people like Swayambhu Manu, the other people of the past, that time the living conditions are very better. The current, in Kali Yuga, the living conditions are very poor. So we cannot expect such kind of peaceful atmosphere.
But still, we also see nowadays, like in recently what we saw with His Grace Pankajangri Prabhu, like the way they relate to the situation, we can actually, that was a live example to see that how they take on difficulties.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
Yat prushto munbi praha dharmanana vidan chuban ranam varna shramanam cha sarvabhuta hita sada.
In reply to questions asked by certain sages, he, Swayambhu Manu, out of compassion for all living entities, taught the diverse sacred duties of man in general and the different varnas and ashramas.
Yeah. For the benefit of people in general, Sarvabhuta Hitarata, he compiled a book describing the duties of different varnas and ashramas. And this book is called as Manusmruti. So the Manusmruti was originally compiled by Swayambhu Manu, and that is being carried forward generation after generation, generation after generation, yuga after yuga. So it is like
that. Manu Smriti and Manu Samhita are one book or they are separate?
they are same, called in a different name. So they are same.
Thank you.
Etatta Adirajasya Manoscharitam Adbhutam Varnitam Varnaniyasya Tad Apatyodayam Shrunu.
I have spoken to you of the wonderful character of Swayambhu Manu, the original king, whose reputation is worthy of description. Please hear as I speak of the flourishing of his daughter Devahuti.
Yeah. So in the 21st chapter, the glories of Kardama were described. And in this chapter, the glories of Swayambhu Manu are described. Now in the next chapter, the glories of Devahuti will be described. So like that. All these personalities are not ordinary personalities. Everyone is exceptionally well-conducted devotees. All those things will be understood in these chapters. Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. We'll stop here with the completion of this chapter, and next week we'll continue with the 23rd chapter.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, do you have some time?
If there is any query based on our class, quickly ask. If there is something any personal, you can call me later.
This is from 321:33, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Quickly go ahead.
It says that thus having spoken to Kardama Muni, the Lord who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness departed. And then the purport Prabhupada says that the Lord is said to be Pratyaka Akshaja. He is imperceptible to the material senses, but he can be seen only by the purified senses.
Yes.
My question is that when Krishna comes and sorry.
Yeah,
please
what is your
continue,
question? Don't read the purport and translation. What is your question to tell?
No, he says that the Lord cannot be seen by material senses. But when he comes as Krishna, as Ram, then everybody sees him, hears him. Then how is it? How do you understand that?
People can see, but they never understood that he is the supreme personality of Godhead. They saw him to be another one of the prince. Okay. So seeing him as a person does not make one's vision perfect. Even Duryodhana also saw Krishna. Ravana also saw Lord Ram, but they never considered him to be Supreme Lord. That seeing is not the proper seeing.
So they could not understand that he is God himself.
They never accepted. Even many told Duryodhana that he is the Supreme Lord. And Duryodhana would always say that he is a magician. He would always say Mayavi.
Okay, so, okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes. So any other query from others?